Hi, today we're going to make a basic sugar cookie so you can frost and decorate however you want to. So the first thing that it calls for is 3 cups of flour. I already measured out my flour, so that's good to go. What we're going to do first is put all of our dry ingredients together. So in a large bowl, mix together the flour, baking soda, salt, and baking powder. So I got my flour, so I'm going to do my baking soda. It calls for 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Here's my little 4th teaspoon. Anytime we do soda, you never want to do too much. If it calls for 1/4 of a teaspoon, that is exactly how much to put in there, no more. So I'm going to sprinkle that throughout. Then it calls for salt. So for the salt, it was 3/4 of a teaspoon. Let's see if I have a 3. I don't think I do. What I'm going to do is just sprinkle some in there. So for the salt. Okay. And then baking powder, it calls for 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Again, never get the baking soda and baking powder confused. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So that's this one. Just double checking. We do a heaping spoonful, remember, and then level off, and then sprinkle that in there. And then what you're going to do is make sure that is all thoroughly sifted together. You really want to make sure that baking soda, that there's no clumps. So as you can see, like I'm sifting through there, but there's clumps, and then you're just going to make sure that those clumps are smoothed out. I will say before I started cooking today, I washed my hands for a solid 20 seconds. My surfaces are nice and clean. My tools are nice and clean. I am wearing a hoodie, so I pulled up my sleeves. I also made sure that my little hoodie strings are tucked in, so it's not going to accidentally get into my cookies. It's very important, like if you're baking or cooking in a restaurant. Oops, that's a really hard chunk. Don't want that in a cookie. To make sure you're staying very sanitary. Okay, so our next step is to blend together in a separate bowl the butter, cream cheese, and sugar until it's light and fluffy. So I've got my mixer out here. You can use just a whisk. You don't have to use a mixer for this, but I had one, so I'm going to use it today. So I'm going to plop my butter in there. This is room temperature butter, so it's nice and soft. So you're going to plop your 2 sticks of butter into there. Cream cheese, it calls for 2 ounces of cream cheese. I have that already measured out here, and I'm going to plop that right into my bowl as well. Oops. Next is the sugar. So there is 1 cup, so 1 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm gonna make a mess. Hopefully I don't make a mess. Okay. And then you just want to make sure that you don't have too much. There we go. So that's 1 cup of sugar. And then another, whoops, I just dumped sugar all over me. And then, so 1 1/4 cup of sugar. And then we're going to go ahead and mix that all together. Okay, so I've mixed it until it's nice and fluffy, if you can see that in there. What we're going to do now is add in the vanilla, egg, and if you want to be creative, you can put some food coloring in at this point. So it calls for, how much vanilla? 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Where's my teaspoon? There it is. double check. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. There we go. And then it calls for an egg. And since we're putting raw egg in there, that's why we don't eat the dough, because that could be yucky. Could make us sick. And then I am going to be creative, and I'm going to make my cookies purple. So I'm putting in 3 drops of food coloring. Wow, that's gel, so we'll see what that does. Okay, and then we're going to blend this all together and see what that looks like. As we blend, we want to make sure and scrape some of the excess off of the blending tools. You got to get it off of the sides there to make sure that it all is nice and combined in there. All right. Mine is definitely not purple enough. I don't know if you can tell the color, so I'm going to add a lot more food coloring in there. I want it to be real pretty and purple, so I'm going to add a lot more in there and see what this looks like. That's a much prettier purple, if you guys can see that. See if you can see that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape the sides a little bit, and then I'm going to slowly add in my dry ingredients. So anytime you make cookies like this, you don't want to just dump all your dry ingredients in there at one time. You slowly add those in there, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm just going to put a little bit in right now. Okay. So I let that blend in there pretty good, and then I'm going to add a little bit more. Together. And then I'm going to add the rest. Okay, so I have it all mixed up here. I made my purple sugar cookie dough. What we're going to do now is we're going to make little balls and put them onto my cookie sheet that is lined with parchment paper. Also, I have my oven behind me that's preheating to, 350, right? 350 degrees. So I'm just going to take my spoon, and I just washed my hands, so we're good to go. And then we're going to make a little ball, just like that, make it pretty, and plop it on my parchment paper. So you're going to do that until your parchment paper is full. You definitely don't want to put your cookies too close together because they will, spread a little bit in the oven. So you don't want them to spread too close to one another and then become one big huge cookie. So once you got your cookie sheet all filled up, you put that in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes.